Good to be here. Good to be here. It's always nice to be with an old friend.
Yeah, Phil, it's great to have you on Cliff's Notes.
Thank you.
One of the things we like to hit on is something of note, and we were touching on the fact that your son is now in the scrap industry. That's a really cool story.
Yeah.
Tell me about that Six Roses thing again and how that all came about.
Well, it's a wonderful thing. I mean, my son Jason, about a year and a half ago, came and approached and said, "I think I'd like to get in the scrap business, Dad." And I said, "That's wonderful." And very, he has an MBA, he has a law degree, he'd worked in consulting, he'd worked in bringing a company public, a startup company, so he had a lot of experience. But he said, "I think I want to come in the scrap business." I said, "Okay, you're going to start from the bottom, and we're going to get it in and through." And we were all together about a year ago for my father's 90th birthday in Chicago. And Jason turns to the whole family and makes the announcement that he's joining the scrap industry. And in conjunction with it, for business reasons and tax reasons, he needed to set up a LLC, for the funding, I guess. And he sets up the LLC, and he says, and we say, "Oh, what's the name?" He says, Six Roses. Six Roses. Now Jason's
I know Four Roses. That's a bourbon I like to drink.
There you go for it. And I'm thinking roses, with my background and Jason's background of liking the Grateful Dead or Phish or these bands, and you see roses in the symbols that they use. So I said, "Oh, this is about that." He goes, "No, Dad." He goes, "This is because I'm going to be the sixth Rosenberg in the scrap business."
Oh, wow.
And to then look across the room, again, it's my father's 90th birthday, and see the tears coming down his eyes.
Yeah.
And then to have my wife elbow me because she sees me choking up, was a very special moment.
Yeah.
And, I think that there's a lot of these, you yourself, are in family business. The history of our industry, and I love the history of our industry.
Yeah.
It's a lot of family businesses.
Yeah.
And to see, that continue with my family is, fantastic. But it's also him choosing to do that.
Sure.
And I think that's also the nice thing that I see in this industry. And just here, we're at the, REMA convention, and I'm walking the halls, and I'm, Joe Senior Citizen at 65 years old, being here, being at these conventions for probably 50 years, and going through, but seeing these young kids, right, even your age guys, and I'm not, saying, that made the choice.
Yeah.
And are doing this out of choice.
Yeah.
Not when, when my father came into our family's business, he had no choice. Mm-hmm. My grandfather said, "You get out of college, you're going to business, you're going to work for us right now." But that our generation, your generation, Jason's generation, I think has had more opportunities in other areas, and even the family kind of promoted those opportunities, and weren't forcing it upon, but to see them want to be there.
Right.
And they want to be there because they've also seen what their father or grandfather have done.
Yeah. Now, the family business that you're referring to, that would have been your grandfather that started that?
No, I would be the fifth generation. So,
okay. So even
I don't know how many
then.
I don't know how many greats we're talking, but when Rachmiel Rosenberg came in the late 1800s.
Oh, wow.
From Eastern Europe to America with, nothing but his clothes on his back. And they came in and they started with what was the rags business.
Okay.
So they were recycling, you were taking old dresses and old clothes and cutting them up and making them into rags.
Oh, wow.
And then selling rags to, the restaurant industry or other, the needed
And were they
rags.
Based in Chicago?
They were based in Chicago. That's where, they didn't go through Ellis Island. They came through, Chicago, and they got to Chicago and they started the rags business. And the rags business turned into maybe some tin can recycling and other things because they were just go-getters, and looking for ways to feed their family. And,
sure.
Today we can proudly use the term recycling.
Yeah, sure.
And figure it all out as we're green and we're great for the environment. Back in those days, it was a necessity to survive. Mm-hmm. How do we make something? So we took somebody else's garbage and made it into money.
Yeah.
And was able to grow, and subsequently over time the business, then, from Rachmiel to Michael Rosenberg, and then he grew the business and started at that time. They started automotive recycling, as the cars come in. I mean, we are talking, at this stage of the game, still over 100 years ago.
Holy.
And, metals recycling grew and it grew. And next thing you know, you had power companies and, popping up in Chicago and all over America, and ended up, getting the way back when the Commonwealth Edison account, and to separate, copper and lead cable, and, grew to be in the 70s by then probably the largest non-ferrous scrapyard recycler in the Chicago area.
Wow, that's unbelievable.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's when you look at the history of the recycling industry, it's kind of interesting that early on, like you're saying, in the late 1800s, early 1900s, most people in that setting would have been doing it, like you said, for survival. They weren't doing it because it was cool.
Exactly.
It wasn't like the in thing to do, or it was actually looked at the opposite way.
Yeah, no, and it was still, and, in many respects, listen, I'm Jewish. We come from a Jewish background. In those days, a lot of Jews didn't have access to education even.
Yeah.
Weren't allowed in some certain universities and places and businesses and practices. So what do? You use your hands. You go out and you find out what to do.
Yeah.
And, this industry, provided that opportunity. And sure, today, now we all wear coats and ties, and,
Right.
We may, all know our finances as well as the guy with an MBA or have an MBA ourselves.
Sure. Yeah.
And those type things, and the growth. But that's just natural growth.
Yeah.
And, that's why I do love this industry, because if you do the hard work and you get your hands dirty, it can pay off.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's real work.
Yeah.
That's even one of the things when Jason said to me, going back to him, he says, when he wanted to come, he says, Dad, I see what you do and it's real.
Yeah.
And he says, I could be in this consulting business and I could be doing all this Wall Street stuff, but it wasn't real.
Yeah. Felt a little detached. I think my stepbrother, he experienced that after he got his MBA. He was going to be a consultant and kind of dabbled here, dabbled there a little bit. And then he was like, I think I want to own my own business. And he ended up going out and getting a small business loan. And he owns a business actually right outside Chicago now.
Okay.
And they're making like leather binders for like law firms and stuff like that. But I think he was feeling the same thing like what you're talking about. Jason was saying it's a little bit too sterile.
No,
and it's not really relational like what we experience, and probably what he was thinking when he was like, Dad, when I think about all the people, like even when my dad turned the lights out during Shabbat dinner, stuff like that.
No, and that's the people you meet, and that's why I love coming even at this stage, and just coming the relationships that are built in this industry.
Sure.
And they're real. And I can't tell you how many. I've probably been to every little league ballpark in North Carolina, South Carolina, and Maryland in my life. Why? Because I travel the roads when I was first starting to buy.
Yeah.
And you get in the car and you get a relationship with a guy from XYZ Iron and Metal in Wilmington or Charlotte or Alexandria or wherever it is. And he says, come on, buddy. Let's, after you tour the yard, my son's playing little league ball. Let's go see it. And you go and you play and you go watch his kid play ball, and you have dinner at the home.
Right.
And, it's a wonderful thing. This industry, because of those relationships.
Let's talk about relationships just a little bit, because Jason grew up seeing you do that. You grew up in a different generation, wasn't technology driven. So when you needed to connect with somebody, you did have the telephone. That's my daughter asked me sometimes. She was like, Dad, you did have a telephone, right, when you grew up? And I'm like, oh my God, yes, we had telephones. But the way you connected relationally was you went, got in your car, drove, rubbed shoulders. One of the things that I find very, very frustrating about young buyers or sellers is that you ask them about follow-up and they're like, well, I emailed the guy.
No,
and I'm like, hey, we're trying to close this deal. Like, I need more than an email. Like, this is a big deal. But in their mind, like, that is how they're connected.
Yeah, it's a false sense of connection, in my opinion. I mean, like you say, when we started out, my boss said to me, and we was in Baltimore, Maryland, and I-95, the major highway that goes from Maine to Florida.
Yeah.
And finally, after, when I was ready to go become a buyer. So what do? He says, okay, you get in the car on Monday, drive to Miami. When you get to Miami, turn around, come back to Baltimore. And you take a rest for a while.
Yes.
Then the next week, you get back in the car, you drive to Maine, and then you come on back down.
Right.
And you meet these people. And he said, the other thing that I want to make sure you do, because like there were phones, but there was these things that many people that are listening to this may not realize. There was also something called the Yellow Pages.
Perfect. I was hoping you were going to bring that up. Yes.
And I said, well, how am I supposed to find these scrapyards? He goes, you just go to every town, you go to a payphone. There'll be a Yellow Pages there.
Yep.
You go to the Yellow Pages, look for the scrap metal dealers, and you go and you'll see all the names. And now do yourself a favor, and excuse me for violating federal law probably at this point. You rip those pages out.
You become the new owner of
you
those Yellow Pages that have the scrapyards.
Because your competitor may be driving behind you the next day. And that's what, and again, you built those relationships and it's real. And, and so in today's, and okay, then all of a sudden the mobile phones show up.
Yeah.
And I had this huge, box that was in my car that was a mobile phone.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of a sudden faxes show up. And then all of a sudden, the next things show up. And, we started to use these, I think, advances, which are very good. I mean, there's, don't get me wrong. I do like email from the standpoint of sometimes there's no confusion. If I say to you 50 cents and you thought I said 52 cents, we can go back to the email and it's in paper and it's writing and there's no legitimate confusion between I thought I heard you say one thing and you said another thing. But when that's the crutch, you know what I mean, that people use and they don't, make that connection, what differentiates you from the other guy who's just doing the same thing?
Correct.
Because sure, in your business, there are things that I'm sure there's some secret sauce in 74 alloys and Tungco and certain things that you may know that your competitors don't. But and same thing in our business with ICD. We may know some things that our competitors don't.
Yep.
But the reality is probably 90% of what we do, our competitors do the same thing. So how do we differentiate ourselves from the competitor? Yeah. And in my opinion, that comes down to relationships. And honest relationships, not just, I'm not trying to denigrate McDonald's when I say this, but not when you get done at McDonald's, make your order, and they say, have a nice day, and they're not even looking at you. Right. In our business, it's have a nice day, and it means it. And, what are you doing today? And you get a little deeper in that relationship. And to me, that's what can separate our company from our competitors.
Sure. Yeah, because like you said, scrap is scrap. So what's that little percentage that's going to have somebody be like, no, those are the guys I'm doing business with.
Right. And, and so it's about trust because they know they're going to deliver. And okay, in our end of the business, just like yours today, there's some real high value here. Oh, yeah. We can be buying a truckload from somebody and it's $250,000 to $1 million. Sure. And there's got to be a lot of trust with that kind of money. Oh, yeah. And so that trust that you can build gets those people to be able to, deal with you. And everything is so transparent today. You can pick up 100 different publications or different websites, and it'll show the price of aluminum, copper, bare bright, 304, 316. That's right. Tantalum, tungsten, whatever metals we're all dealing in, it's all published.
Yeah, it's not secret anymore.
It's not a secret anymore. I mean, I joke around in the old days when I first started buying stainless, I used to be able to ask one question. So Cliff Nance would call me up. Hey, Philip, I got stainless to sell. Great, Cliff. Is it magnetic or non-magnetic? And you'd answer magnetic. Okay, that'll be 10 cents a pound. Or if you said non-magnetic, that'll be 25 cents a pound. And that was it. At the end of the transaction, you'd say, fine, I got, let's just say non-magnetic. Right. Sell you 40,000 pounds at 25 cents. You didn't have any XRF machines. You didn't have any, you had no idea whether it was 304 or 316, whatever it was. Then there were companies like us who could afford to have these big Kevex machines that were the size of this room, to analyze stuff. And sure enough, it was Inconel 600 worth $3 a pound, not 25 cents. Score. Today's day and age, or then it started to change. A guy would call in 304 stainless, which is basically 8 to 8.5% nickel. They'd call up and say, well, I got 8.56% nickel bearing 304. What are you going to pay me for that extra 0.06% of nickel? And I'd be like, what did you just say? But that's the difference. Yeah. And it's
so now you got educated sellers.
So you got and it's good to have educated sellers. It's good to have educated, consumers. And I'm not sitting there wishing for the old days.
Sure.
But I'm sitting there. Those are the realities that we have to change. But now, if everybody knows what everybody knows,
yep.
How do you still then differentiate yourself?
Yeah.
And make it legitimate also, because these publications don't always get things right.
That's right. Yeah.
And how do you, when the guy calls up and says, well, the publication says it's $2 a pound and you're quoting me $1.75.
Yeah. You're like,
how do they trust me? My favorite line, a lot of the metals we deal with are traded on the LME. And I always used to joke. I said, you're right. Do me a favor. Take your truck, deliver it to the LME, and I'm sure they're going to pay. And he looked at me and go, what the F are you talking about, delivering it to the LME? I said, so why are you quoting me the LME? It's an irrelevant number until you can deliver it there.
Get in your pickup truck and take it down there and let me know how that works out for you.
The guy says, LME, that's in London. And I'm in Martinsville, South Carolina. I said, well, have a nice trip,
Well, that's fantastic, man. I mean, that is a perfect example of some of the sellers that we can deal with. But let's talk about, we got just a couple minutes left. Let's talk about ICD. We're obviously, they bring a different relationship feel to the table. But just talk a little bit about what ICD specializes in and what all the coverage is.
ICD, very neat, interesting company. We're a privately held company based out of New York. We're part of the ICD Group that's into almost every facet of raw materials around the world. We have interest in mines. We have interest in processors. We have our own melt shop. We have multiple recycling facilities, Australia, China, Europe, U.S., 3 in the United States. Very forward-thinking organization. My areas of responsibility in what the metals and alloy division, which is the division that I'm the commercial director of, we specialize in nickel alloys for aerospace use, cobalt alloys, tungsten alloys, molybdenum alloys, titanium alloys. And so anything that goes into the aerospace sector, we're probably touching, except for the aluminum frames on planes. And
is the aerospace sector or industry, is that just something that you all focus on particularly, or that's just where a lot of these alloys?
That's where a lot of the alloys, and that's where the needs are. Okay. And the terminology that some people may be familiar with are vacuum alloys versus air melt alloys.
Yeah.
So it's definitely the niche part of the recycling industry, where it's high dollars, low volumes. Tantalum recycle,
sure,
things.
Yeah.
And somebody says, and again, I know this isn't about pricing, and I don't want everybody to say, then hear this and call me and say, what's your price? But we're talking some of these things we're dealing with are $200, $300, $400 a pound or even higher. You get into these things, and I joke around sometimes when I first came to be with ICD, anything that ends in EOM we do. And I said, what does that mean? Titanium, gallium, niobium, molybdenum,
just rhyme it.
And
at
one point when I started to get involved with this versus my background in just kind of the nickel, cobalt alloys and stainless, and the owner says to me, we're looking for germanium. I looked at him and said, we're looking for germanium. I think those are the flowers I gave my wife for Valentine's Day last year. And he said, no, you knucklehead, the metal. But so it's been a pleasure for me.
Because you've had to shift your focus
to learn,
a little bit.
I was with another company that we had sold and been there for all my career. And, now to be with this, it's re-energized, a 60-year-old guy to be able to go into a new business with good people. And so it's a wonder. ICD is a great organization. We're very open. We're very lean. We do, I'm not going to get into the specifics. There's 4 of us on the commercial side, and we're doing more business than one could imagine.
That's awesome, man.
And it's great.
Well, let me say thank you for being on Cliff's Notes, and it is very exciting to hear everything that's going on, not only for your family, for ICD, and thank you for your friendship, the relationship that we've had for decades now. We've been at REMA together for for decades, and you're actually the main reason why we joined. We didn't even know about this kind of organization. So appreciate you, appreciate your father, your wife, kids, the whole family, and make sure you tell Steve and the boys I said hello.
I will for sure, and I do. I mean, I know you want to end it. I just want to say that is what you just hit on, that relationship.
Yeah.
And that knowing. And I'm not saying, here was your father, bumping into me and
Sure.
it was actually at a consumer outing.
Yeah.
And what do you know? And you just start a relationship, and it's honest. And next thing you know, we're having dinner at each other's homes. We're touring the Israel together.
Right.
And there's no historical connection between us.
Sure.
So we had a connection of honest people, honest business. And guess what? Some fun times.
That's right.
Because that's also the key to this.
That's right.
This is not just about buying and selling. It's also about having fun.
Yeah. Well, man, I love you. Appreciate you. Thank you for being on Cliff's Notes.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. Be well. Take care.
Cliff's Notes. Cliff's Notes. Cliff's Notes.